When we talk about modern cyber risk, it is impossible to separate that discussion from the web browser, because the browser has quietly become one of the most powerful and most exposed applications in the entire enterprise. Every day, users rely on it to access cloud services, internal portals, vendor platforms, documentation sites, and personal resources, often without thinking about the security implications of that activity. The browser is not just a passive viewer of text and images. It is an execution engine capable of running scripts, rendering dynamic content, handling downloads, and interacting with system resources. Because of this capability, attackers frequently design their campaigns around web delivery, knowing that if they can lure someone to a malicious page, they can attempt exploitation, credential theft, or malware delivery. Hardening web browsing means acknowledging that reality and building technical safeguards and safer execution pathways so that routine internet use does not become an easy doorway to compromise. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is a companion to our course companion books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at cyberauthor.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. Understanding how web-based attacks unfold helps explain why hardening is necessary. A user clicks a link, either from an email, a chat message, a search result, or a social media post, and the browser requests content from a remote server. That server may return legitimate content, malicious scripts, hidden redirects, or exploit code targeting browser vulnerabilities. In some cases, the user is prompted to download a file that appears harmless but contains embedded malicious functionality. In other cases, the site presents a convincing login page designed to capture credentials and relay them to the attacker in real time. At each of these stages, the browser becomes the vehicle for risk, and if it is not configured and protected thoughtfully, it may execute instructions that directly harm the system or expose sensitive information. One of the most foundational steps in browser hardening is maintaining current software versions and promptly applying updates, because web-facing applications are constant targets for vulnerability research and exploitation. Attackers actively scan the internet for systems running outdated browser engines or plugins that contain known weaknesses. Once a vulnerability is public, exploit code often appears quickly, lowering the barrier for attackers to weaponize it. Regular updates close these known holes and significantly reduce exposure to opportunistic attacks. While patching alone does not eliminate all risk, it removes many of the easiest pathways attackers rely on when targeting web applications. Beyond updates, limiting unnecessary browser components is a powerful way to shrink the attack surface. Browser extensions and plugins can add useful functionality, but they also introduce additional code that runs within the browser's execution environment. Each extension has access to certain browser capabilities, and poorly designed or malicious extensions can intercept data, modify content, or weaken security controls. A disciplined approach involves allowing only approved extensions that are required for business use and periodically reviewing them for continued necessity. By reducing the number of active extensions, you reduce the number of potential entry points for exploitation. Web filtering mechanisms add another layer of protection by blocking access to known malicious or high-risk destinations before content is even delivered to the browser. These mechanisms rely on threat intelligence, reputation databases, and pattern analysis to identify domains associated with phishing, malware distribution, or command and control infrastructure. While no filtering solution can catch every new domain instantly, blocking known bad destinations significantly reduces overall exposure. Filtering also provides visibility into attempted access, allowing security teams to identify patterns such as repeated attempts to reach suspicious sites, which may indicate phishing campaigns or compromised systems. Script control and content restriction policies address the reality that many attacks rely on active content executing within the browser. Modern web pages use scripting languages extensively for legitimate functionality, but attackers also use scripts to deliver malicious payloads or perform unauthorized actions. Browser hardening can involve restricting certain types of active content, limiting automatic execution of potentially dangerous features, and enforcing strict security settings. For example, Disabling automatic execution of downloaded files or restricting cross-site scripting behavior can reduce exploitation pathways. These settings do not eliminate functionality, but shape how and when execution is allowed. Isolation technologies represent a more advanced approach to safer execution pathways by separating web content from the core operating system environment. Instead of allowing web code to execute directly on the user's primary system, isolation mechanisms render content in a controlled, separate space. This may involve running the browsing session in a containerized environment or leveraging remote rendering so that the potentially risky execution occurs elsewhere. Even if malicious code runs, its ability to affect the underlying system is limited by design. Isolation transforms the browser from a direct bridge to the system into a mediated interface with protective barriers. Credential protection within the browser environment is especially important because many web-based attacks aim to harvest usernames and passwords rather than deliver traditional malware. Fake login pages can look nearly identical to legitimate services, making visual detection difficult. Technical controls can prevent the reuse of enterprise credentials on untrusted domains, flag suspicious login forms, or block submission of sensitive credentials to sites that fail verification checks. These protections interrupt one of the most common and damaging phishing outcomes, stolen authentication data that leads to broader compromise. Configuration policies further strengthen browser security by enforcing consistent settings across users and devices. These policies may include disabling insecure protocols, enforcing secure connection requirements, restricting file download locations, and controlling automatic execution behaviors. Consistency matters because inconsistent settings create uneven risk across the organization. When everyone operates under the same hardened configuration, monitoring and enforcement become more reliable. Configuration discipline ensures that browser behavior aligns with security expectations rather than individual user preferences. Monitoring browser-related activity provides an additional layer of defense by identifying suspicious behavior patterns. Logs that capture blocked domain access, unusual download attempts, or repeated redirections can reveal ongoing attack campaigns. If a particular domain repeatedly triggers filtering across multiple users, it may indicate a widespread phishing attempt. If a single device repeatedly attempts to access suspicious infrastructure, it may signal compromise. Monitoring does not prevent browsing risks on its own, but it enhances situational awareness and supports timely response. Mobile and remote work contexts introduce additional complexity because users increasingly browse from various devices and networks. Hardening strategies must extend beyond traditional office desktops to laptops, mobile devices, and remote endpoints. Consistent policy enforcement across environments reduces the risk that attackers target weaker entry points. Whether browsing occurs on-premises or remotely, the same principles of updates, extension control, filtering, isolation, and credential protection should apply. Uniform security posture strengthens overall resilience. Balancing usability with security is an ongoing consideration in browser hardening, because overly restrictive policies can frustrate users and encourage unsafe workarounds. The objective is not to make browsing difficult, but to make it safer by default. When protective controls operate transparently and effectively, users can perform their work without constant interruption. Feedback mechanisms that allow legitimate sites to be reviewed and approved prevent unnecessary disruption while maintaining security standards. Thoughtful calibration maintains productivity without sacrificing protection. Regular validation of browser defenses ensures that safeguards remain effective as threats evolve. Testing can confirm that malicious links are blocked, suspicious downloads are intercepted, and isolation mechanisms function as intended. Validation reveals configuration drift, outdated policies, or blind spots that may have developed over time. Without testing, organizations may assume protections are working while attackers quietly bypass them. Routine evaluation maintains confidence and performance. Ultimately, hardening web browsing is about recognizing that the browser is a high-risk execution environment that must be treated with the same seriousness as any other critical system. By combining timely updates, extension control, web filtering, script restriction, isolation technologies, credential safeguards, consistent configuration, monitoring, and validation. Organizations create layered defenses that significantly reduce exposure. Each safeguard addresses a different stage of the attack chain, and together they transform browsing from a direct vulnerability into a managed and resilient activity. Over time, disciplined browser hardening reduces successful exploitation and supports safer interaction with the digital world that modern work depends on.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.